There comes a moment in every life where the noise around you suddenly fades. Friends stop calling, familiar doors close, and the conversations that once filled your evenings with laughter become echoes of distance. At first, it feels like punishment. It feels like rejection. You might even wonder if you've been abandoned by the very God you trusted. But let me tell you this: silence is not a sentence. It is a sanctuary. When heaven intends to lift you higher, the first thing it does is switch off the noise. Think of a concert hall before the music begins. The crowd hushes, the instruments fall quiet, and the conductor raises his hand. That pause, that silence is not emptiness. It is anticipation. It is the tuning room of destiny. In the same way, your season of loneliness is not a void, but a deliberate act of alignment. Heaven cannot speak through static. It silences the crowd so you can finally hear the one voice that matters. Most people fear this silence because they've never faced themselves without distractions. They cling to shallow companionship, endless entertainment, or constant validation to drown out the aching question that lingers in the soul. Who am I when no one is watching? But the chosen ones, the ones God has set apart, must enter that question and let it carve them open. For it is only in stillness that truth can settle. The prophet Isaiah once declared, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." Isaiah 30:15. Notice he did not say strength is found in applause, in affirmation, or in constant busyness. Strength comes in quietness. Strength comes in trust. That is why heaven presses pause on your life, not to strip you of joy, but to recalibrate your frequency until you resonate with eternity itself. Picture a violin string. Left untuned, it produces noise, not melody. But when stretched to the precise tension, it releases beauty that can fill a hall. Loneliness works the same way. It stretches your spirit, sometimes painfully, but always with purpose. Heaven is tuning you, not to break you, but to prepare you for the music of your calling. So if you feel alone right now, if the silence feels suffocating, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it do its work. Because silence is not your enemy. It is your preparation. It is heaven's way of saying, I am about to play something through you the world has never heard before. Most relationships are not built on truth. They are built on comfort, on unspoken agreements to soothe each other's insecurities, to avoid difficult questions, and to maintain the illusion that everything is fine. These contracts of comfort often masquerade as friendship, but in reality, they are pacts of silence. The moment you stop signing that contract, the relationship begins to crumble. And isn't that exactly what happens when you awaken? The conversations that once felt natural suddenly sound hollow. The laughter you used to share feels forced. The rituals of distraction, gossip, shallow debates, endless complaints begin to ring like static in your ears. You haven't grown cold. You've simply grown beyond the script. And those who still need the illusion feel betrayed by your refusal to play along. But here is the truth. If a relationship can survive only when you pretend, then it was never real. When heaven removes people from your life, it is not punishment. It is pruning. The vine must be cut back for new fruit to grow. God knows that false companionship is too heavy for the bridge He is building under your feet. Think of architecture. A cathedral cannot rise if its scaffolding is weak. If the keystone is misaligned, the entire arch will collapse under its own weight. Relationships built on illusion function the same way. They might look sturdy from the outside, But the first tremor of truth will send cracks racing across the foundation. When your soul shifts to a higher frequency, those misaligned bonds simply cannot hold. They fall away. Not because you hated them, but because truth and illusion cannot coexist in the same structure. Jesus himself warned us, "Do not be surprised, my brothers and sisters, if the world hates you." 1 John 3:13. Hatred here is not always active hostility. Sometimes it is the quiet withdrawal of those who no longer recognize your frequency. You didn't change to hurt them. You changed because truth demanded it. And the cost of truth is often isolation. But pay attention. What feels like subtraction is actually multiplication. Every shallow tie that unravels frees you to carry something weightier, something eternal. The silence that follows the loss of counterfeit friends may sting, but it is only clearing space for authentic connection to emerge. The crowd will always call this arrogance. They will whisper that you've become distant, aloof, or even cold. But don't be fooled. What they call arrogance is actually freedom. The freedom not to perform, not to bend yourself into shapes just to be accepted. Heaven is liberating you from contracts that were never meant to last. So, let the drift happen. Don't cling to scaffolding that is already cracking. Don't grieve the contracts that collapse under the weight of truth. Instead, see them for what they are. Expired agreements that no longer match the design of your destiny. The breaking of these contracts is not the end of your story. It is the unveiling of a new foundation. When heaven presses you into silence, it does not leave you without guidance. 3 voices remain to confirm that your solitude is not madness, but design, scripture, nature, and art. Together, they form a triple witness, echoing across centuries, cultures, and even the deep structures of creation itself. First, Scripture speaks. The prophets and psalmists knew the paradox of loneliness. Elijah, exhausted and despairing beneath the broom tree, did not encounter God in the earthquake or the fire, but in the gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:12. That whisper would have been lost in the noise of crowds, but in silence, it became the lifeline of a prophet. David too understood when he wrote, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." Psalm 37:7. Stillness is not weakness. It is the battleground where faith is sharpened and trust is forged. Second, nature preaches. Creation itself reveals the beauty of solitude. The cedar of Lebanon grows tallest where the winds are fiercest, its isolation on the mountain ridge becoming the reason for its height. The lanternfish glows in the crushing darkness of the deep sea, unseen by any audience, proving that light does not need applause to be real. The eagle does not seek the flock. It commands the sky alone, soaring higher precisely because it is unaccompanied. Can you not see the pattern? Solitude in nature is not exile. It is elevation. Third, art testifies. History's greatest works were often birthed in silence, misunderstood by their contemporaries. Caravaggio painted light erupting from darkness, turning shadows into sacred drama. El Greco's elongated figures seemed to stretch heavenward, as though solitude itself had pulled them beyond human proportions. Handel's Messiah begins not in thunder, but in silence, before the chorus bursts forth with glory. In every case, greatness was conceived in obscurity and revealed in time. These 3 witnesses tell us that the silence you fear is not empty. It is pregnant with power. The Bible shows us men and women who found God in loneliness. Nature proves that isolation produces resilience and beauty. Art demonstrates that obscurity is often the workshop of eternity. So why does this triple witness matter? Because in your loneliest nights, when the crowd is gone and the room feels hollow, these echoes remind you, you are not lost. You're being written into a greater story. Solitude is not the absence of meaning. It is the chamber where meaning is amplified. The masses will always flee to distraction. They will drown their souls in noise, fearing the mirror of silence. But the chosen ones learn to remain. They discover that solitude is not a vacuum, but a cathedral, where scripture hums like stained glass. Nature towers like a cedar, and art whispers through brushstrokes and notes. When you feel abandoned, lift your eyes, open a psalm, walk among the trees, listen to music born from centuries past. Heaven has already left its fingerprints everywhere, reminding you that you are not crazy, not forgotten. You are aligned. Every generation faces the same temptation, to trade truth for applause. The crowd offers its validation freely, but always at a cost. If you chase their approval, you may gain their cheers for a season, but you risk losing the very crown heaven intended for you. Think of King Saul, anointed, chosen, empowered, yet undone by his obsession with public opinion. When confronted, he confessed, "I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them." 1 Samuel 15:24. His hunger for validation led him to disobedience, and disobedience cost him the kingdom. The lesson is thunderous. Fear of man is not harmless. It is a snare that steals destinies. Or consider Pilate. He found no fault in Jesus, yet delivered him to be crucified because he feared the uproar of the crowd. History remembers him not as a wise ruler, but as a coward who betrayed truth to maintain peace. Isn't that terrifying? One man's fear of rejection altered the course of eternity's most pivotal trial. The applause of men is always fleeting. The judgment of heaven is forever. But this temptation is not confined to kings and governors. It lives in all of us. Who hasn't felt the subtle pull to adjust words, soften convictions, or play along just to keep relationships intact? How often have we swallowed truth to avoid awkward silence, to preserve the illusion of harmony? Yet every time we trade honesty for comfort, we pay a hidden price, the erosion of our own soul. Applause is addictive because it feels immediate. It fills the room with warmth. It makes us feel seen. It reassures us we belong. But like sugar, it offers no nourishment. Once it dissolves, the hunger returns, deeper and more desperate than before. And so many live their entire lives in this cycle, feeding on validation while starving for truth. In contrast, silence may feel harsh, but it purifies. When you no longer bend to fit expectations, when you refuse to rehearse lines just to please, the crowd may label you cold or arrogant. But in reality, you are stepping into freedom. Freedom is costly, yes, but far less costly than slavery to the opinions of others. Jesus asked a piercing question. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Mark 8:36. To win the applause of the crowd, but lose your authenticity, your integrity, your destiny. That is the worst bargain of all. The spotlight is intoxicating, but it burns everything it touches. Truth may lead you into shadows, but shadows can be holy when God is with you there. So ask yourself, are you living for the cheer of the crowd or the whisper of heaven? One fades by morning, the other echoes through eternity. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them mock your silence. Better to walk alone in truth than to march with the multitude in illusion. The price of applause is too high, and the chosen ones know it is a currency they cannot afford. Great breakthroughs are rarely built on grand gestures. They are forged in the furnace of small, quiet victories, the kind no one notices, no one applauds, and no one celebrates. The chosen ones learn that faithfulness in obscurity is more powerful than performance in the spotlight. Think of it this way: a seed does not sprout into a tree overnight. It breaks open in the dark, hidden under the soil where no eye can see. The breaking is painful, the darkness is suffocating, and the silence feels endless. Yet in that very hiddenness, life takes root. The seed's victory is not in being seen, but in becoming. Your season of solitude works the same way. Every quiet act of discipline, every unseen prayer, every honest step you take when no one is watching is preparing you for fruit the world will one day taste. The chosen practice integrity in small things. They show up on time when no one else bothers. They keep promises that others forget. They work with excellence even when no one is checking. To the world, these victories seem insignificant. But heaven sees differently. Jesus himself said, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Luke 16:10. Small faithfulness is the seedbed of great destiny. I once heard the story of a man who drove a city bus. After overcoming years of addiction, he lost nearly all his companions. At first, he felt cursed by loneliness, but he chose to keep showing up, sober, reliable, consistent. One morning, a grandmother approached him with tears in her eyes and said, "You saved my grandson's life simply by being here every day." His hidden victory became a public testimony. His solitude was not a cage, it was training ground for purpose. This is the paradox of the chosen. The world looks for instant results, but heaven invests in long-term resonance. God is not testing how quickly you can perform. He is shaping how deeply you can endure. Like a blacksmith hammering steel, he tempers you through repetition, forging resilience that cannot be faked. And here is the beauty: small victories compound. One honest word builds trust. One day of discipline grows into a habit. One act of love, repeated faithfully, becomes a legacy. What begins as a whisper in solitude becomes a roar when the breakthrough arrives. The dome of destiny is not raised in a day. It is built brick by brick, in silence, with unseen hands. So do not despise the little things. Do not curse the quiet seasons. Every hidden act of obedience is a rehearsal for greatness. Heaven is drafting your story in the shadows before unveiling it in the light. And when the day comes, the world will marvel at the cathedral of strength that was built from countless unseen victories. Remember this: greatness is not proved by applause. It is proved by faithfulness when no one is watching. And the chosen know these small but true victories are the foundation of their destiny. When heaven strips away the crowd, it is not to leave you barren. It is to prepare you for something rarer, something deeper, connections that are not built on illusion, but on recognition. The chosen learn that true friendship is not about quantity. It is about alignment. Most people gather in groups because sameness feels safe. They share gossip, repeat opinions, and validate each other's fears. These connections resemble scaffolding made of paper. Fragile, temporary, easily torn apart by the first gust of truth. When you awaken, you begin to see through this scaffolding, and as you step away, others may whisper that you have become distant or cold. But in reality, you are simply no longer willing to trade authenticity for comfort. True friendship cannot be forced. It emerges naturally when two souls recognize each other without masks, without performance, without need. It is not born from desperation, but from resonance. Like stars in the night sky, these friendships appear only when the world grows dark enough to reveal them. You cannot chase them. You can only become the kind of person who attracts them. Scripture reminds us, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Proverbs 27:17. Notice, iron does not need endless company. It only needs the right friction. One friend who speaks truth is worth more than 100 companions who echo illusions. Ecclesiastes affirms this as well. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. Ecclesiastes 4:9. The value lies not in numbers, but in depth. History and art echo this truth. The greatest partnerships were never crowds. They were duos or trios forged in fire. Think of Jonathan and David, whose covenant went beyond politics into loyalty that defied kings. Think of Van Gogh and Gauguin, artists whose time together was tumultuous yet transformative, sharpening each other's vision. Authentic connection is rarely smooth. It is always refining. And here lies the paradox. Solitude makes you capable of true friendship. When you no longer seek others to fill your emptiness, you are finally free to love without strings. You no longer need to be mirrored. You can simply be known. The chosen do not crave approval, so their friendships are not built on validation, but on recognition. They can give without demanding, remain loyal without manipulation, and walk away without bitterness when seasons change. Such friendships are rare, yes, but when they come, they are sanctuaries. They are not stage plays where masks must stay on, but sacred spaces where the soul can breathe. In a world addicted to shallow affirmation, these bonds stand out like wells in the desert, offering water that sustains for years. So if you find yourself alone, take heart. Your solitude is clearing space for the real. Do not mourn the collapse of fragile scaffolding. Rejoice, for heaven is preparing alignments that cannot be shaken. And when those friendships arrive, you will recognize them instantly, not by the noise they make, but by the peace they bring. The chosen understand this. Better one bond of truth than 100 ties of illusion. Rare but real, that is the friendship worth waiting for. Every season of silence leads somewhere. Heaven does not call you into solitude to leave you wandering forever. There is always a threshold, a door, a moment when the hidden preparation collides with destiny. The chosen must walk through that door, but only when their frequency has been tuned to match its lock. Breakthrough rarely arrives with trumpets and parades. More often, it comes quietly, almost unnoticed, like dawn creeping over a horizon. One day you wake up and realize the weight you carried in silence has become strength. The tears you shed in secret have watered seeds you did not know were growing. The habits you built in solitude, discipline, integrity, faithfulness, have laid a foundation strong enough to carry glory. Revelation 3:8 declares, "See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." That is the promise of breakthrough. The doors that matter are not opened by human hands. They are unlocked by alignment. Heaven prepares you in the hidden place so that when the moment comes, you fit the design perfectly. You are no longer scrambling to prove yourself. You are simply ready. Imagine an architect laboring over blueprints in silence. No one sees the sketches, the revisions, the long hours spent refining the structure. But when the cathedral finally rises, it is not by accident. It stands because the unseen preparation was faithful. Your solitude has been that blueprint room. Heaven has been sketching your destiny in the dark, and now the dome is about to rise. But make no mistake, the threshold demands courage. To step through means leaving behind the safety of obscurity. It means walking forward without the applause of the crowd. It means trusting that the same God who carried you through silence will carry you through exposure. The world may still misinterpret your quiet strength as arrogance. Let them. Their misunderstanding cannot close the door heaven has opened. And here is the paradox. What once felt like exile becomes coronation. The very solitude that broke you now crowns you. The silence that emptied you now amplifies your voice. The rejection that once cut deep becomes the proof that you were never meant to belong to the crowd. You were meant to belong to eternity. So when the door swings open, do not hesitate. Do not look back for those who left. Do not grieve the scaffolding that fell away. Everything that collapsed was never meant to carry you into this moment. Step forward with steady feet, for heaven itself has endorsed your arrival. The threshold of breakthrough is not about fame, but alignment. It is not about recognition, but resonance. You are not stepping into a stage. You are stepping into the design you were born to fulfill. And as you cross, you will realize, solitude was never your prison. It was your preparation. The silence was never empty. It was sacred. Rise, chosen one. The door is open. Walk through. You have walked through the wilderness of silence. You have endured the breaking of false ties, the stripping away of illusions, and the long nights when even your own prayers seem to echo back unanswered. Yet here you stand, not broken, not forgotten, but refined. Loneliness was never your punishment. It was heaven's consecration. Every tear that fell in private became mortar in the cathedral of your destiny. Every small victory, unseen by human eyes, was recorded in eternity's ledger. Every false friendship that collapsed under the weight of truth cleared the space for something unshakable. You thought you were being buried, but in reality, you were being planted. Now look around you. The silence that once terrified you has become your fortress. The solitude that felt like exile has become your crown. You no longer need the applause of the crowd, for heaven's validation thunders louder than any cheer this world could ever give. You no longer hunger for shallow connection, for you have tasted the deeper resonance of truth. The psalmist declared, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." Psalm 118:22. That is your story. What others dismissed, heaven has exalted. What the crowd mocked as arrogance, God has revealed as freedom. What seemed like abandonment was in fact alignment. You are not empty. You are overflowing with a strength the world cannot comprehend. And so, chosen one, rise. Walk forward into the door no man can shut. Let your silence thunder louder than their noise. Let your stillness disrupt every fragile illusion around you. You were never called to fit into their patterns. You were called to break them. You were never meant to echo their fears. You were meant to resonate with heaven's frequency. Do not mourn what is gone. Do not chase what has drifted away. The wilderness was always the passageway to the promised land. The silence was always the prelude to the song, and the crown you now wear is not forged of human praise, but of eternal purpose. May your solitude remain your sanctuary. May your silence remain your strength. And may your breakthrough, when it comes, testify not to your effort, but to the faithfulness of the one who refined you in the dark. You are not alone. You never were. Heaven has always been with you, quietly, invisibly, but relentlessly. Now the world will see what the silence was building all along. Rise, chosen one. Your coronation has already begun.